Hello everyone and welcome to Sipz and Stories. My name is Elizabeth and in today's video I will be doing my September wrap-up. September was another great reading month for me. I read everything from philosophy to middle grade to YA and a little bit of everything in between. So grab your favorite beverage as I discuss these amazing books. The first book that I read in September was Nature and Other Essays by Ralph Waldo Emerson. This book is also part of the Gibbs Smith collection. I love these editions because they're really easy to read, especially when you're trying to read tough authors like Emerson. But I was inspired to read Emerson after reading Henry David Thoreau's Walden last month, which I absolutely loved. So if you want to know my opinion and thoughts on Walden and civil disobedience, I will link that video below. But Emerson was a mentor to Thoreau and other great American authors like Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman and Robert Frost. In fact, a lot of people consider him the founding father of American literature. And he was really good friends with Thoreau. They lived in Concord, Massachusetts together. They were a part of the same transcendental movement, and they believed in a lot of the same ideas about man's connection to nature and spirituality and self-reliance. Some of the themes that Emerson explores are nature and man and God all being one. And he describes this as the all-seeing transparent eyeball concept. So basically he's saying that he disappears and he can't tell the difference between himself and God in nature, that he can be found in nature, nature can be found in him, and we're all a part of this great thing, this great source called God, this energy, and that every individual soul is connected to God. And I think that concept is repeated throughout spirituality and a lot of religions, so it's nothing new that Emerson is describing here, but I just do like the nature of the way that he describes it, that if you're getting lost, if you're getting a little confused, you can find the answers in nature. In fact, yesterday I was up in the mountains and I really just got a sense of what Emerson was talking about, what Thoreau was talking about. When you're up there in the crystal clear air and the silence and you're just looking out over the valleys and the trees, you really get a sense that we're all just one. We're all connected, and that things like this pandemic are really not that big of a deal, that there's something, call it God, call it whatever you want to call it, something's running the show here and it loves us and we're a part of it and it's a part of us. And so that's basically what Emerson is talking about in this book. So I would say two of his most famous essays are Nature and Self-Reliance. I have read Self-Reliance before. It's fantastic. It was really nice to get a refresh on Self-Reliance again this year. And if you only ever read one thing by Emerson, I highly recommend that it is Self-Reliance. It's a very quick, easy read. Well, maybe it's not very easy, but it is quick. It's about 20 pages long, and that everything he believes about is in that essay. And one of the things that I really like that he talks about is that if we're all one, we're all part of God, that every individual soul has a unique purpose and a unique gift and a unique expression of God, and that it's our purpose to kind of put that out into the world, basically. He talks about not comparing yourself to other people from the past, other great men and women, people living today that may be richer or smarter than you or have more friends. He just talks about living your best life, living your purpose in the here and now. I really love Self-Reliance, especially when he talks about literature. He talks about that, some of these great writers like Shakespeare, the reason that we resonate with them so much is because what they're saying speaks to us on an individual soul level. And for me, that's certainly the case with writers like Emerson, with writers like Thoreau. The reason I like them so much is that something they're saying is resonating with me on a soul level. That's basically what Emerson is saying. And so that it's your unique perception of other people's ideas that is the most important. It's your intuition, it's your beliefs that are the most important thing. Refer within, basically, for the answers. So these concepts are nothing new. They're repeated throughout different religions, other different spirituality teachers. He also reminds me a lot, if anyone is familiar with Eckhart Tolle and the Power of Now. He does talk a lot about the present moment and the here and now. That's why a lot of people consider him the father of American literature, because he was the first person to recognize that no, we don't need to go to Europe anymore for all these great thinkers and these great ideas. America has its own unique identity, and there's some great thinkers and great ideas right here now. So that's why he did inspire people like Whitman, like Dickinson. In fact, one of my favorite passages by Emerson is in the essay Self-Reliance. I'm not even sure if this is famous or not, but this really sums up to me what Emerson is all about, especially in regards to the soul and the present moment. So, and I quote, "Man is timid and apologetic. He is no longer upright. He dares not say, 'I think, I am,' but quote some saint or sage. He is ashamed before the blade of grass or the blowing rose. These roses under my window make no reference to former roses or to better ones. They are for what they are. They exist with God today. There is no time to them. There is simply the rose. It is perfect in every moment of its existence. Its nature is satisfied, and it satisfies nature in all moments alike. But man postpones or remembers. He does not live in the present, but with reverted eye laments the past, or heedless of the riches that surround him, stands on tiptoe to foresee the future. He cannot be happy and strong until he too lives with nature in the present, above time." So again, I just think that's what sums up Emerson, and he's pretty dense, he's pretty intense, so I'd have to read his essays multiple times to really get a grasp on what he's saying. But if you're only going to read one thing by Emerson, I do recommend that it is Self-Reliance. A lot of his main points and topics are all contained in that one essay, and I absolutely love Emerson. He is the best. Another book I read this month is More Than This by Patrick Ness, and I mentioned this in my Seattle Bookstore book haul tour, and this one I picked up at one of my favorite bookstores, Third Place Books, and oh my god, you guys, my mind was blown. This book is so phenomenal. It's like nothing I've ever read before. It's a 5-star read for sure. Anytime I set aside a book and I finish it and I can't stop thinking about it, to my mind, it means that it's a 5-star read. And I now consider Patrick Ness a genius. All of his other books, The Knife of Never Letting Go, A Monster Calls, all of those books are now on my TBR, except I'm going to wait a little bit before I read his other books because this one was really, really intense. Basically what it's about, and I don't want to give away too much because part of the joy of this book is experiencing it and the way that Patrick Ness writes this book and paces it. So basically what it's about is a boy named Seth who's a teenager, and at the beginning of the book he drowns. He dies and he goes to this other place, and it's absolutely fantastic. Can best be summed up as a very emotional read, almost like a psychological thriller too. And it reminds a lot of people of The Matrix. So I know The Matrix again is becoming very popular now. That 4th movie with Keanu Reeves is about to come out. So if you're a fan of The Matrix, I do think you would enjoy More Than This. I personally liked it maybe a tad more than The Matrix because the main characters were kids, and I think that it just really had a lot of heart to it, a lot of soul, some compassion, forgiveness. It explored different topics that The Matrix doesn't explore. And I love the main message of this about forgiving yourself, forgiving those that hurt you, and that there's more than this, that life will continue, that life goes on, that there is a purpose to our life. Very Emerson. I think Emerson would approve of this book. I absolutely loved it. The only thing I would say about this book is that it's very triggering. It goes to some dark places. It explores dark themes like depression, like teenage homophobia. It also talks about childhood trauma. So if any of those things trigger you, you might want to stay away from this book, but it's so hopeful. Its message is so hopeful. And for me, when I was reading, a lot of dark moments from my past were just rising to the surface. This book is very cathartic. But yet the main message of having hope, of forgiveness, is why this book is fantastic. So I'm not going to give away too much, but please, I want everyone in the world to read More Than This. I feel bad that this is just marketed just to YA, just to teenagers. Every adult like me should read this book. It's absolutely fantastic. Okay, switching gears a little bit. The next book that I read was Agatha Raisin and the Deadly Dance. I absolutely love the Agatha Raisin series. It's a really nice palate cleanser, these books, if you've been reading heavier stuff like More Than This and Emerson. And if you're unfamiliar with Agatha Raisin, it's basically about this woman, Agatha Raisin, who's in her mid-50s, and she's this very no-nonsense, very tough character with a heart of gold. And it starts out where she is a PR agent in London. She sold her PR company, so now she's very wealthy, and she has retired to the Cotswolds to start her new life. But because she's so smart and because she's so nosy and likes to get involved in other people's business, she ends up becoming a detective and solving all of these murder mysteries. And this one's really special because she finally starts her own detective agency. Woohoo! I love MC Beaton's writing and how she has all these really mean and snarky characters. And Agatha is just a real person. She is really tough on the outside, but on the inside she has a heart of gold. And I feel so bad for her. I think every woman can relate to her because she just has a number of disastrous relationships. She's always trying to lose weight or quit smoking. This series is so much fun. And there is a new television series based on these books. And I think there's even some BBC radio dramas. So you can take a deep dive into Agatha Raisin if you like her, like I do. The next book that I read this month was Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston, and again, I could not help myself. I said in my mid-year freakout tag that I would probably wait on this book until the holidays, but the hold came in from the library and I just had to read it. And I did. I love this book so much. It is hugely popular. In case you've been living under a rock, it is the very it book of the moment in middle grade. It is the newest, latest middle grade fantasy series, like Harry Potter, like Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. And although I do like Nevermore just slightly more, this one was still so much fun. And the best way I can describe it is that it's like Men in Black, but for kids. So if you are a fan of Men in Black and Will Smith, I think you will really enjoy Amari and the Night Brothers. So what is this book about? Basically, it is about a young girl named Amari who lives in this very tough neighborhood in Atlanta. Her mom is a single mother, she's a working nurse, and her brother Quentin has gone missing. And Quentin's quite a few years older than Amari. He's more of college age, and he is just everyone's favorite person. He was a star athlete, a gifted student. He started a tutoring program in the neighborhood. And so everyone, especially Amari and the mother, are just really bummed out that he has gone missing. But he has sent Amari a message, and he invites her into this secret world called the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. And so Amari figures out what Quentin was doing when he went missing. And the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs is a lot like Men in Black. Basically, supernatural creatures like witches and werewolves and ghosts really exist. And so it's up to this group of people to keep them a secret from the rest of the world and to mitigate any damage that they cause. So just like Men in Black, they have all these agents, and Amari is training to become a junior agent, and she has to go through all these tests and trials, and she's trying to figure out what happened to Quentin. But at the same time, she has this supernatural ability that is illegal. So that does cause a problem. And it's just a fantastic series. I absolutely loved it. I loved B.B. Alston's writing style. He's just very quick and crisp, and he doesn't get lost in flowery language like a lot of fantasy writers can do. I think if you know any reluctant readers, girls and boys, this is a good book to give them because it's really quick in pace. And I know kids can get lost a little bit sometimes, but this one is very action-packed. And I do think they're making a movie about it, and I believe their next book will be coming out next spring. Fantastic series. I loved it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read this month was Tokyo Ever After by Emiko Jean. This is another book that I mentioned in my Seattle bookstore tour book haul video. And I picked this one up at a very famous bookstore called Elliott Bay Book Company. And again, I loved it. This book was exactly what I was hoping it was going to be. The best way that I can describe it for those of you that are unfamiliar with it is that it's like a cross between The Princess Diaries and the movie What a Girl Wants, except it's all set in Japan, in Tokyo and Kyoto. I absolutely loved it. It's basically about this girl named Azumi, and Azumi lives in this very small town in Northern California with her single mother, who is a professor. And her girlfriends do a little bit of research, and they figure out that her real father is the Crown Prince of Japan, and they call him the George Clooney of Japan. And they confront the mother and they say, "Is this true?" And the mother says, "Yes, he was my boyfriend back in college. He is your father." And so Azumi is just caught up in this entire new world. She's whisked off to Japan to meet her father and her relatives, the emperor, her aunts, her uncles, all of her cousins. Some of them are on her side and some of them are very backstabbing. And just like the Princess Diaries, she has to take all of these etiquette lessons. She has to learn all about the Japanese culture and try not to embarrass herself and her father at all these major events. And of course she still does. But I loved it because there's also this little sweet romance to this as well. She's also falling in love with her bodyguard and it's so cute. But I especially love that it is set in Japan. I am fascinated with Japan. I cannot wait to go there. It's next on my bucket list, not only because of the Tokyo Olympics this year, but it has been on my bucket list forever. I'm fascinated with this mixture of old and new to their culture. I really love the scenes in Tokyo. There's some nights out on the town in Tokyo, but I really love the scenes in Kyoto. I just cannot wait to go to Kyoto. I cannot wait to go there. Love this book and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read this month was Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and what can I say? I feel like I am really late to the party on Song of Achilles. I did read Circe a couple years ago, and I remember I went to a book talk where Madeline Miller came to our town when she was promoting Circe, and I just loved her in person. I am such a huge fan of Madeline Miller. She is such a classy woman, and she talks exactly like you think she would. Very classy, very eloquent. In fact, I think she is a teacher, and she talked all about how she was a Greek and Latin scholar. She's just the real deal. She went to all these Ivy League schools. And I remember one thing that she said was that before she sits down to write, she really likes to read a little passage of poetry to get herself in the writing mood. And that is very obvious when you read her books because they're very otherworldly, they're very lyrical. And I absolutely love her Greek myth retellings. And this one was no different. I think I still prefer Circe because that one is a little more feminist. But this one was fantastic. In fact, it is a huge book in the LGBTQ community because it's told from the perspective of Patroclus, who was Achilles' boyfriend, his best friend, his lover. And so it's basically the Iliad retelling, but from the perspective of Patroclus and Achilles. I loved it. As you can imagine, all the Greek gods and all the Greek heroes make appearances in this book. And just again, the real star of this book is Madeline Miller's writing. It's fantastic. And I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read in September was Percy Jackson and the Last Olympian by Riordan. And again, I did talk about this series in my Percy Jackson Greek mythology video, which I will link below. I talked about Percy Jackson in depth and then a lot of books for children that relate to Percy Jackson, about Greek mythology, that make great companion reads to Percy Jackson. So please check out that video below. I had a great time making it. But again, I love this series. This was a really nice finish to the series, a great finale. Riordan's such a fantastic writer. I love his sense of humor. And in this one, he does not disappoint because the final battle between the Titans and the Olympians, it takes place in New York City. A lot of fun. And I especially like the ending when Percy is forced to make this decision and he ends up staying true to his friends. I loved the ending. Fantastic. And now I'm just looking forward to the new Disney Plus TV series. I cannot wait till that comes out. Thank you everyone for joining me for my September wrap up. As you can see, I loved all of these books, everything from Emerson to Percy Jackson. That just represents the type of reader I am, very eclectic. But again, I did want to recommend More Than This by Patrick Ness. I think that was my favorite book of the month. It absolutely blew my mind. I loved it. And in fact, I did go back and make a Spotify playlist based on More Than This. So geeky, I know. But again, thank you everyone and have a great day. Happy reading.